What if I told you that much of what we know about Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle might have been lost forever if it weren't for Islamic scholars? After the fall of the Western Roman Empire, Europe entered what many historians call the Dark Ages. Knowledge that once flourished in ancient Greece and Rome was slipping into obscurity. Libraries were destroyed, scholars silenced, and the philosophical torch dimmed. But it didn't die. It was carried across deserts, through mosques, into Baghdad, by the hands of Muslim intellectuals who saw value where others saw heresy. Welcome to the incredible overlooked story of how Islamic scholars saved Greek philosophy. It all began in the 8th century, during the Abbasid Caliphate. The Abbasid rulers, centered in Baghdad, were passionate about knowledge. They established the Bait al-Hikmah, or the House of Wisdom, a research and translation institute that became a beacon of intellectual activity. Here, Arabic-speaking scholars undertook one of the most ambitious translation movements in history. They didn't just translate texts from Greek into Arabic. They preserved them, commented on them, expanded on them, and in many cases, made them better. Aristotle, whose works had nearly vanished from European consciousness, was reborn in the Islamic world. Plato's dialogues were studied and discussed. Pythagoras and Euclid's mathematical theories were not just preserved but built upon. Medicine, astronomy, ethics, nothing was off limits. Scholars like Al-Kindi, often dubbed the philosopher of the Arabs, were instrumental in this movement. He believed that Greek philosophy and Islamic theology could coexist, that truth, regardless of its source, was valuable. He introduced Neoplatonism into the Islamic world and wrote commentaries on Aristotle that would later influence Christian Europe. But perhaps the most legendary figure in this intellectual renaissance was Ibn Sina, known in the West as Avicenna. A polymath of staggering brilliance, he fused Greek philosophy with Islamic thought in works like the Book of Healing and the Canon of Medicine. His commentaries on Aristotle became essential reading in both the Islamic world and medieval Europe. And then there was Averroes, Ibn Rushd, from Islamic Spain. While Europe was still suspicious of Greek rationalism, Averroes passionately defended Aristotle. His writings would later be translated into Latin and spark a philosophical revolution in Europe known as scholasticism, led by thinkers like Thomas Aquinas. By the 12th century, Europe began to awaken. Crusaders and scholars traveling to the Islamic world encountered ancient knowledge reinterpreted through Arabic. This prompted what's now known as the 12th century Renaissance. Universities began to appear. Libraries grew. Greek philosophy, once on the brink of extinction, was back, not thanks to Rome, but Baghdad, Cordoba, and Cairo. And this is where things get really fascinating. The Islamic philosophers didn't just transmit Greek ideas, they challenged them. They debated Aristotle's concept of the eternity of the universe. They reconciled Plato's theory of forms with Islamic metaphysics. They developed new ideas in logic and metaphysics that would later influence Enlightenment thinkers. And while much of this intellectual treasure would eventually find its way into Latin and shape the foundations of the European Renaissance, it's vital we remember where the light came from during Europe's darkest intellectual hours. Before we dive deeper, take a second to support this channel. If you're into history, philosophy, and untold stories like this one, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Trust me, you won't want to miss what we've got coming next. Back to the story. Why did Islamic scholars care so much about Greek philosophy? After all, they had the Quran. They had their own scholars and traditions. But many believed that rational inquiry and faith could go hand in hand. They saw philosophy not as a threat, but as a tool to better understand divine truth. There were, of course, critics. Theologians like Al-Ghazali argued that philosophy could lead believers astray. His famous work, The Incoherence of the Philosophers, critiqued thinkers like Avicenna. But even this sparked further philosophical responses, like Averroes, the incoherence of the incoherence. These debates were not signs of decay, but of a vibrant intellectual culture willing to grapple with the hardest questions. Today, when we walk through universities or pick up a philosophy book, we often think of ancient Greece and Enlightenment Europe. But in between those two eras stood a golden bridge of knowledge, constructed by Muslims who believed in the power of reason, translation, and cross-cultural exchange. Without the work of these scholars, names like Plato and Aristotle might just be whispers from the past, lost to the sands of time. So the next time you hear about the Renaissance, remember, it didn't begin in Florence. It began centuries earlier, in the golden domes of Baghdad, the quiet libraries of Cordoba, and the minds of thinkers who dared to preserve and expand the wisdom of the ancients. If this story inspired you, drop a like, leave a comment with your favorite Islamic philosopher, and share this video with someone who loves history as much as you do. And don't forget, subscribe for more deep dives into the lost chapters of human knowledge. Thanks for watching. Until next time.